Hey, how's it going today? Jeff Jerina here, and welcome to the Men Unplugged show. On today's episode, I'm joined by Ray Martinez, who is a former police sergeant. He was also a former mayor of Fort Collins, Colorado, and he also served in the armed forces where he received an Army Commendation Medal. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is the importance of keeping a vision for your life, which is something, if you really think about it, is essential if you want to continue to move forward. So as we talk about the importance of maintaining a vision for your life, I want you to know that you can start that process of finding and living your God-given purpose right now. And I would love to help you get there. As you may already know, I offer a free digital copy of my book, 10 Steps to Power and Purpose, which goes over some key steps that will actually help you do this right now. You can get a copy of that book when you go to menunplugged.net/email. Now, just so you'll know, I'm in the process as we speak of expanding that book into a paperback and an audiobook, which is going to have more content and a new title. It's something I'm pretty excited about because already right now, I've added about 25 more pages. In addition to that, something that will help you go even farther and much quicker is to sign up for my online companion course and personal or group coaching. Any one of these are going to help you find and live your true purpose. They're going to help you eliminate the guesswork of what to do with your life. They're also going to help you achieve more joy and fulfillment as you live out your true calling. So to find out more about these coaching and speaking opportunities, just send me an email at jeff@menunplugged.net. All right, let's cue the intro. So the big question is this: how do we as warriors of Jesus Christ, men of God who want to stay battle ready, who want to honor the Lord, and who want to grow in our daily walk, unplug from those things that weigh us down so we can ignite our faith, strengthen our family, and ultimately succeed in every aspect of life? That is the question, and this show will give you the answers. My name is Jeff Jerina, and welcome to Men Unplugged. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Men Unplugged show. To connect with me about my personal coaching and speaking events, just email me at jeff@menunplugged.net. And hey, if you want to get a discounted copy of my new book, Faith Without Fear, How to Share What You Believe with Confidence and Power, visit menunplugged.net/faith without fear. And when you order from that page, you're also going to get free shipping and some other free resources. With that said, let's meet today's featured guest, Ray Martinez. Ray, welcome to the show, brother.
Jeff, thanks. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to share my dreams, my visions, and my life with your audience.
All right, I'm ready to go. So I'm going to ask you here, Ray, are you ready to plug in and recharge?
Let's do it. Let's get plugged in and let's get rolling so we can make the machine work.
Ray, right off the bat, I want to say thank you for your service to our country, both in the military and for those that you served in Colorado. So thank you so much for that.
I appreciate it. It's always been an honor, and I always felt like I'm serving the Lord when I've done this.
Well, you've done a lot of things here. I mean, you've had an interesting life here, Ray. You've started from very humble beginnings. You've had a life that a lot of people would look at and say, man, he's had some tough circumstances. He's had a tough situation, but yet you don't see it that way. You see it as, you know what? The Lord has blessed you in how you've been able to do the stuff that you've been able to do. And we're going to get into that in this interview. But I kind of want to start out here on today's show with a quick overview of your childhood. You were given up for adoption when you were 8 years old, and you never met your mother until later on in your life. And you spent the good part of your childhood in an orphanage. So talk about that time in the orphanage.
Well, actually, it was when I was 8 days old. So the minute I was given birth, 8 days later, I was relinquished to the state orphanage in Denver. It was a state orphanage for neglected dependent children. And I was actually born in Grand Junction in a house, which I later did find that house where I was born. And ironically, the president of Mesa University was raised in that house, and he helped me find it because I used to be on the board of trustees just a few years ago. So how ironic that was. And I always wanted to know where I was actually born. And I found that, and I know the doctor that delivered me in her house while my mother was there. So being relinquished and released to the orphanage, there's a little story behind that, because when my mother relinquished me, she had asked if she could hold me one more time. And they didn't want her, this is how it was back in the 50s, they didn't want her to get attached to me for some reason or another. I think they were concerned about that. So instead of saying, well, you can't hold him again, they told her that I had died.
Oh,
and
wow.
So she never knew that I was really alive. But as we find out years later, that she'd always had an intuitive thought that I was alive out there somewhere. She didn't have any reason why or evidence as to that I could be or anything like that. It was just a mother's intuition that she had. And I think it was a blessing that God left in her heart to let her know that someday we'll meet again. And I was eventually adopted when I was 5 years old. So I have, snapshot film clip memories of what the orphanage was like. And there were some real key elements that I learned about in the orphanage that I carry those values and throughout the rest of my life and even today. When we had Christmas in the orphanage, you usually stood in a circle, and what I figured out later, it was the Marines that would come in and they'd give us each a toy to unwrap. And we unwrap it and put it in the center of the room, and then we all shared the toy.
Right. So you grew up understanding that nothing is really yours.
Right. You share everything that you have. You don't have your own closet. You don't have your own footlocker. And when you go outside and play, they bring out a table of coats. Every day you got a different coat. So that's kind of how it was in the orphanage, about sharing.
Now that you're looking back on that time as an adult now, did you want some of that stuff? Or did you just really just didn't even think about that?
It was a way of life. So that's what you did. You learned to share. You learned to be who you are in that orphanage. It wasn't a question of that's mine. We never were taught that. We were never taught, at least for me, was never taught to be stingy. You just assumed whatever you had, others could use as well. We would stand in long lines to ride one tricycle and then run to the end of the line. We'd ride down this little hill in the back and then run to the end of the line. I can remember seeing myself just laughing and having fun. When no one taught us that standing in line and sharing was boring. No one taught us that. We took it as, that was great. I want to do it again. And
it was just a way of life.
Mixed with other kids. It was a way of life.
You had talked about this, having this sense of rejection, that when you would go to one of these couples' houses, they would do this trial basis to see if you were the boy that they would want to bring home as their son. You said that you just never remember being in their home, but you remember the ride back, knowing that they right there did not accept you. Why do you think you didn't remember going to the home? You think that was the way of the Lord protecting you from those feelings, or you just try to block it out?
I think, as a kid, psychologically, if you have a bad experience, that you have a way of blocking those things out. But I think it's a way of God protecting you as well. I mean, that's part of His divine creation to help you learn to block things out.
Right.
And I shared that experience, and I'll share that because I eventually became a policeman. I've covered severe car accidents when people are yelling in pain and we're trying to get them out of the car. And when we get to the hospital the next day, when I've gone back to visit some of them, and I, apologize, I'm sorry we had to put you through such pain getting you out of the car. They don't remember it.
Wow.
They don't remember the experience. So I think there's a way that in God's creation, He helped us to just be able to tolerate so much. And if we can't handle it, then in His design creation, He built a way in to block it out.
Man, praise the Lord for that. You had a dream or a vision early on, maybe sometime around that time frame or maybe a year or two later. Tell the Men Unplugged community what that dream or vision was.
I could visualize myself as being a policeman. And I wanted to be a policeman. I don't have any experience to share that why I wanted to be a policeman. It was almost like God implanted that in my mind and in my heart. You see, it's just like God to put the right desires in your heart. He has a plan for us. Sometimes we don't even know what the plan is, but He knows, and He knows how to start that growth of getting that direction, whether it's a career or something that you're in contact with, whatever it is. God has a plan. And that was one of the first plans that He showed me, that I would become a policeman. Well, I always believed you should never chase your dreams. You should live your dreams.
Yeah,
because
that's
you'll
good.
never catch them if you're trying to chase it. So
Right.
live your dreams. So even as a kid, I always had this fascination of pretending like I was a policeman. And when they asked me what I wanted for my birthday or Christmas, I wanted a toy police car or toy police badge, those kinds of things. My mind was set, and I was in motion. So growing up as a kid, you thought like a kid, but as you got more mature, you started thinking more in reality. Well, how do I prepare myself to become a policeman? What should I study? What should I read? And I started reading different things about police. And one of our neighbors has grown up was a policeman, and he used to take me for a ride in his police car and show me the fascination about police work. His name was Sergeant Roy Erickson, and he was a big influence on me about police work because of my interest. And so I knew I had to be a good citizen to be a policeman. So I always made sure I tried to be the best citizen that I could and try to be as honest as I could growing up. Even though I haven't accepted Christ yet, I knew that was an important role. So you have to live your dreams. And the same way when I became a shoeshine boy and I decided I'm going to be a mayor someday, and then I'm sitting there thinking, well, what am I going to do first? Well, obviously I thought I need to be a policeman. So I had my pecking order right. I just knew both were going to happen. I just didn't know exactly when. So I was totally convinced, deep down in my heart, deep-seated, that was my vision, that was my dream, and I'm going to start living it now. And the other thing that I have is growing up is that someday I wanted to publish a book. I wanted to be a writer. And as a lot of people don't know, but I ended up, publishing 13 books. But I kind of went through this stage, that, all right, you want to be a mayor someday? What can I do to live that dream? Well, in the 5th grade, I was asked to be on student council, and I became the secretary of student council. That was my first real taste of elected office. So I was elected to be on student council. I was elected to be the secretary of student council. Everyone liked that position because you got out of class to go from room to room and read the minutes of the last student council meeting.
Hey, I like that.
The whole school knew who you were. So politicians, what do they want? They want people to know who they are.
Right.
And that was my greatest opportunity to let people know who I am. And I could read and I could take notes and I could give a speech. That was my way of practicing my speeches already at a young age. God was preparing me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can tell you, looking back here on my life, just to relate with that, my dad was always putting me in these positions, in these situations, and to speaking to people, speaking in front of adults.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd start sharing a story and he'd share a story and then he'd say, Jeff, I want you to finish it. And so he's always in a way putting me on stage and I didn't even notice it until I got older. And so now as a professional speaker and running the show and doing all these different things, I can see that I was being trained early on. To your point, when you get trained early on, God knows your giftings. He knows how you're best suited. And if you don't know that, again, if you haven't signed up to their email list, to the Men Unplugged community, do that, because I send you a free copy of a digital copy of my book, 10 Steps to Power and Purpose, to help you find out your true purpose. You talked about the importance of not running or chasing your dream, but following it. And by the way, Ray, that reminds me of a song from Tom Petty. I love Tom Petty. You remember the song says, running down a dream never would come to me, going wherever it leads. I love the beat to that song, but if you think about that song, the main chorus, you're never going to get that dream if you're always chasing after it.
I believe you gotta live your dreams. That's what's important. You live it for today.
Exactly.
Live like you want to be a mayor. Live like you want to be a policeman. Live like you want to be a writer. And part of that too is I always want to be a writer. So I used to, as a kid, and I have no idea why, I used to write letters to Billy Graham.
Really?
I always thought Billy Graham was right. Yes. And I always thought Billy Graham was answering the letters. It's probably his staff or whatever, but I never forgot the address because it always said, just write to Billy Graham, Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's all the address you need. That's what he used to say. So I tried it. And I used to write him letters.
Wow, that's
Isn't that
cool.
amazing?
That's really cool.
I was practicing my writing even then. And then when I got to high school, I became one of the writers for the school newspaper.
Wow, that's really
God
good.
was preparing me.
So give me one or two tips for the Men Unplugged community right now, Ray. I know you shared some here, but what are some key things, just one or two, maybe take about a minute here, that they can do to live their dreams?
First of all, learn to trust your intuition, because that intuition is given to you by God. And then trust yourself that you can do it. Some people don't believe they can do it. And I wish I'd have known God much earlier in life, but somehow I had a sense of presence that he was always with me. And then when I finally accepted Christ, I realized he was. He was always with me. And the different events in my life that had happened, God's presence was there because he knew what the outcome was going to be. So he was preparing me because he knew that I was willing to serve him. Why was I writing Billy Graham? You got me. But I tell you what, the things that Billy Graham wrote back to me were inspirational.
Right.
And I was impressed with them.
Yeah.
And these were personal letters I get. No one else would read it. It was mine. I wish I would have saved those. But anyway, it was that's the thing I say. You got to learn to trust yourself, trust your intuitions, and know that those are implanted by God. Psalms 37:4 talks about that. It says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. In other words, he will implant the desires that you need. He will give you the desires that you want. They're given by God. They're not for wrong or evil, but he will implant those. And when he says delight yourself in the Lord, it means to submerge yourself like being put underwater. So totally engulf yourself in God. And God says, I'll give you the right desires. You never have to worry about saying, well, do I have the right desire or not? That's not God. God reaffirms what your desires are. He did that all my life. I'm
glad you shared that verse, and that reminds me of Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ Jesus who strengthens me. Hey, Men Unplugged, do you struggle with sharing your faith? Are you afraid at times to share the gospel? Do you worry that you'll say something wrong or that you're not qualified enough to share the hope of Christ with others? In Faith Without Fear, you'll overcome all these reasons and more when you learn how to simply share your faith in a simple, natural way. Ideal for individual or group study, you'll crush any fear that you have about sharing your faith, learn how to overcome the most common witnessing obstacles, and much, much more. So regardless of your age, vocation, or even your biblical knowledge, you'll be encouraged and equipped to share your faith with confidence and power. To learn more and get your copy today, go to menunplugged.net/faith without fear. That's faith without fear. So Men Unplugged, hear those three things again. Number one, trust your intuition. Secondly, trust yourself knowing that you can do it. And lastly, you have to know that messaging, that information, these thoughts that you're having, that they come from God. Tell me the circumstances that led to your faith in Jesus Christ.
But, the circumstances, I said, there's dots connected all my life, but there's some key elements and moments that I remember. When I went into boot camp, this is a story that I've shared with a lot of groups, but this story in particular, I'm not even sure if I shared it with you yet, Jeff. But
no, I don't know. I won't know until you share it.
When I went into boot camp, I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. We used to call it Fort Misery.
Oh man!
And Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri was where I took the 8 weeks of boot camp, and our company was F-11-4. And I remember, I thought, why is everybody yelling at me? Because that's what drill sergeants do, right? If I was a kid off the street, I wasn't used to this, right? So I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I learned lessons the hard way. And then in boot camp, I decided, you know what? I don't want to stay here anymore. I want to leave. And I was going to go AWOL. And that was my plan. And I remember during that first 4 weeks in boot camp, I remember this one soldier who always would catch him staring at me for some reason.
Huh.
We weren't in the same platoon, but we were in the same company. And every time we'd be marching or something like that, I just remember looking back at him, and there he was looking at me. And I thought, what's the matter with this guy? So I never really got to know him or talk to him, nor did I want to, because I thought, he's kind of weird.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of how I took it. And I remember one time on bivouac march, we were marching up this huge hill, and then when an airplane fly over, we were doing what we call playing war. So that was the signal that we were under attack. So we had to fall off the road, fall down to the roadside, get off the road so the enemy didn't see us, right? Well, as a kid, I was a little 115-pound weakling carrying this big military backpack and a steel pot and carrying our M16s. And I remember going up that hill, and then I thought, oh, great, the plane's coming. We can rest. That's how I saw it, right? So I took advantage of that, and I went down the hillside, and I lost my footing, and I started falling down that hill. I lost my M16. I was rolling like a turtle that couldn't stop. And I couldn't stop. I tried grabbing on the thing, and it was almost like a lost cause. And as I was rolling a couple of times, still trying to stop, I remember seeing these boots come down the hill chasing me, and I thought, that's the drill sergeant. He's after me, and I'm going to be in trouble. But I remember him chasing down the hill, and I remember with one hand he grabbed my backpack and stopped me, and his heels were kind of sliding a little bit. And he picked me up with one hand, and it was that soldier I was telling you about.
Oh, wow.
That kept staring at me. And he helped me get back up the hill, and he didn't say anything. And we found my M16. We got back in line, and the drill sergeant, nobody knew the difference. Nobody knew what happened. Otherwise, I would have been in trouble. And I got back, and I marched in line and got back into formation. And I remember this experience is just like that rattled my cage. And I looked back at him a couple of times, and I remember him just smiling at me. That's it. And I thought, I think even now, like, what strength was that he could run down that hill, catch me, stop me, pick me up with one hand. And I just thought, that was a strong kid. And get me back up the hill. So another long story short, when I decided to leave that night, I decided I'm leaving. It was about 1 a.m. And I got up, made my bed, out of habit, made my bed, because that's what you do in boot camp. You make your bed. And I, out of habit, made my bed, and I was getting ready to leave, got my clothes on and stuff. And this same soldier walked down the hallway, because we all had what's called fire guard duty. You had to get up, do it for 1 hour, then the next person gets up for 1 hour. And I assumed he was on fire guard duty. And he goes, hey, he said, do me a favor. He said, read this book before you leave. And I'm sitting there thinking, how does he know I'm leaving? I didn't say I was leaving, right? And he handed me this book, and it was a book written by David Wilkerson called "The Cross and the Switchblade." You ever remember that book?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, it's about a kid that lived a gang lifestyle. He said, read this book before you leave. And I threw it on the bed, and I said, yeah, right. You know, I'm going to sit down and read a book now. And then he handed me another book, and it was the Gideon Bible. I still got that to this day. I kept that Bible, never let go of it. It was the Gideon Bible. And he said, you might want to look through that too. And I thought, is he serious? I mean, I think I'm going to be here all night?
Right.
I said, yeah, okay. And then he left, right? And I looked at the book. The book cover kind of fascinated me, so I opened it, and I read the first page, and the sun came up, and the drill sergeants were waking us up. I never did leave, and I finished that entire book, The Cross and the Switchblade.
Wow. Wow.
And then I looked at that Bible, and the back of the Gideon Bible has the salvation plan. And I remember reading that, and I thought, maybe someday. I don't know. And I put that stuff in the footlocker, and I got up, and I wasn't tired. And I was already dressed, and everyone said, Bruce, you got ready fast. Well, I've been ready since 1 a.m.
Right.
And so I was fascinated by that. And so no big deal. We graduated 8 weeks later, got out of boot camp. They did this group photograph, and they had like a choir stand. So everyone stood on different rows, and they did this group photograph of the company. And I remember looking back, and up in the top row in the left-hand corner was this same soldier, right? He was a redheaded guy. I remember that. And there was the same soldier. And I looked up at him, he looked at me, and I thought, he's still looking at me. And I thought, good riddance. But yet I wasn't hateful about it. I was just like, this guy's always around. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I went home. There's a leave. You go home for a couple of weeks, and then you go to your AIT class, which to me was military police school. So I volunteered for the draft so I could get into the military police because I knew I wanted to be a policeman. So another long story short, they took the photograph. You go home for two or 3 weeks. In the mail, they send you your photograph, the group photograph they took. So I was going through the group photograph, and I was looking at everybody, and I looked in the upper left-hand corner, and that guy was not there.
Whoa.
And I kept looking. I thought, well, maybe I'm looking at the wrong corner, and I went to the other corner. I didn't see him there. So I looked at all 4 corners, and then I looked at each person individually. He was not there.
I already know where you're going with this, but tell me, why do you think he wasn't there?
I think it was the angel of the Lord. I think it was an angel watching over me.
There you
Remember
go.
that verse in Hebrews 13, 1 and 2? It says to entertain strangers, for some have entertained angels unawares. And I really think that's what that was.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense to me what else. I couldn't think
believe
of
it.
anything else. In fact, I never thought of it then. I just couldn't figure out why. And I thought, you know what I initially thought? I thought, he's such a weirdo. He probably stepped out of the picture and didn't want his photograph taken. That's what I rationalized.
Right.
And then after I got salvation, then I was convinced that's what it was.
Wow.
That had to be an angel of the Lord. When I think of all the ways he intervened, how he picked me up, caught me down the hill, no one else knew about it, how he intervened with me before I was getting ready to go AWOL and put a stop to everything that was going bad for me. Everything that was going bad for me there, he was there.
Wow, that's a powerful
like
story. That is powerful right there. I mean, that stuff happens. It does happen. The Lord, can use anybody. He can use anybody. Use his angels to get your attention, to get you to trust in him. I believe that for sure. So I want to ask this last question here before we close this thing down. I'll say this. You're a shoe shiner. You served in the military. You're a policeman. You were the lead investigator in an international terrorist investigation. You served as mayor in Fort Collins, Colorado. You've written 13 books. You've done some incredible things here, Ray. But one of the things that you did actually helped yourself was when you went on this quest after you retired to find your biological mom.
Mm-hmm.
And you wrote about that
I did.
in your book, Baby Boy R. So talk about that journey and that victory in meeting your mom and how that's impacted your life today.
You know, after I had left office as mayor, and I've always had this grudge growing up and through life. I want to find my mom because she needs to know that she threw away the wrong kid. So I was holding a little grudge against my biological mom, not even knowing her, right? You know, as time went on, and as I left the office, and my adopted mom died on Easter night in 1994. My adopted dad died on Father's Day night in 2000. So they were gone. And I thought, you know what? I want to find my biological mom. All of a sudden, my heart changed. And I wanted to find her because I felt like God impressed me that she's alive out there. But I also told God, and I really, you know, I asked him, first of all, for forgiveness for even begrudging her. I told him, I said, all I want to do is let her know that life turned out great. I just want to be able to talk to her, let her know life turned out great, and that I wanted to thank her for giving me life and not taking my life. And when I changed that attitude within 6 months, and when I actually started the quest, it was like within 30 days, I found my mom, November 5th, 2005.
Wow.
And when I made that phone call to her, when I finally identified, and that's a journey in itself that we don't have time for. But when I made that phone call, she hung up on me. And I made another phone call, and I left her a message. And I told her, I said, I don't want you to think I'm holding anything against you. I don't want to disrupt your lifestyle or anything like that. I just want to be able to tell you a couple of things. So I called her that night again from a different phone line, and she answered the phone. And I said, Gloria, because that's her name. I said, Gloria, don't hang up on me. I just want to tell you a couple of things, and I'll never bother you again. So she listened. And I told her my story growing up, pretty much what I told you, how I became mayor and a policeman and all these things. And so I think she was a little fascinated by it. And she all of a sudden, you know, listened intently. And I told her, I said, I just want two things. I want you to know that life turned out great, as I described. And I want to thank you for giving me life and not taking my life. I don't know what happened. I don't care. I just want you to know that life turned out great. And she told me, she said, I've got your numbers. And if I want to pursue this, I'll let you know. The next morning, she called me up and she was sobbing. She said, and the first thing she said on the phone, she said, son, this is your mother. That was miraculous in itself. All of a sudden, she called herself my mother.
Wow.
And she called me son. So that just all of a sudden emotionally hit me.
Yeah.
And she said, I want to tell you what happened. And I said, you don't need to. I said, I don't need to know that. I just wanted you to know those two things now. She said, I think you need to know. And she told me about how she was violated against her will with a violent act. And that's how I came to be. And so we met a week later. She wanted to meet me, and we had the longest marathon breakfast you've ever seen, embracing each other. And she said, the reason why I hung up on you, because she said, I was shocked because they had told me that you had died.
Wow.
She said, but for some reason or another, I believed you were alive out there somewhere. And she said her and her married husband used to go to the Catholic orphanage to look for me, thinking I might be there, and they wanted to reconsider bringing me back into the home. But they were looking at the wrong orphanage. But see, God had a plan.
Yeah.
He had a design. The things that happened to me to this day till now and meeting my mother, God had his timing in place of how that was going to happen. And we got back together. I found 4 sisters and a brother I never knew I had. And we are so reunited. We're all in love with each other. And, you know, it's just like a whole new family. God gave me this, everything that I wanted plus some, you know.
Wow.
So That's how God does things, right? Your cup will overflow. That's what he says. He gave me more than what I asked for.
Man, it's incredible. I tell you, Ray, that just 2 verses popped in my head here. Genesis 28:15, God says he'll never leave us nor forsake us. He's with us and will watch over us wherever we go. And then the verse, I just had it. I can't believe I forgot this. Jeremiah 29:11. He has great plans for us, ones with a future and a hope. Now, if you're listening right now, Men Unplugged, and you don't have confidence that God has a great plan for you, just listen here to Ray's interview. If you have to play it again, I would say listen to it again, because it's proof that God has great plans for you, ones with a future and a hope. So, Ray, with that said, give the Men Unplugged community here one last parting tip of wisdom, and then we're finally going to roll out of here.
Yeah, here's what I would say. Remember the story of Joseph in the Bible. And when Joseph confronted his brothers, the very brother that they threw away into slavery, the very brother who got accused of sexual assault, thrown into prison, and it became the leader of Egypt. This brother confronts his brothers about it, and they were scared. They were afraid Joseph was going to get even with them and kill him. But Joseph said in Genesis 50, verse 20, you look at that verse, he said, no, what you intended bad, God made good.
Right.
So that's my word of wisdom, is that what things you think are going bad in your life, God will turn that into goodness, and he will make you grow from that. It's all intentional. It's all by design.
No, that's big. All right, I'm going to put a link to Ray's book, Baby Boy R, how you can get that on the show notes of this episode. Ray, thank you so much for sharing your story with the Men Unplugged community. And you actually gave some bonus tips here. You didn't just give us 3 values for living. You also gave us 3 tips for living your dreams. It was a real honor and a blessing.
Yes,
thanks again, Ray.
God bless you. Thank you.
All right, Men Unplugged, I hope you were encouraged and equipped by what Ray and I had to share today. And before you go, don't forget that you can get the full show notes for this episode when you go to menunplugged.net and you type in the search bar, Ray. That's R-A-Y. Everything that we spoke about, all the links to get your copy of Faith Without Fear, and also to get on the Men Unplugged email list. And again, let me just recap that. It's menunplugged.net/email. And if you want to get your copy of Faith Without Fear, go to menunplugged.net/Faith Without Fear. Until next time, stay plugged in and recharged. God bless.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. There's plenty more to see at menunplugged.net, including key resources and ways to engage with Jeff in his training and speaking forums. While there, don't forget to subscribe and receive a free gift. We look forward to you joining us next time here on the Men Unplugged Show.